Thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm a synthetic organic chemist. It's very interesting for me to be here at a materials meeting and learn about the properties and materials in general. So I'm sort of at the first step in the food chain towards materials because we design organic molecules, or at least organic materials. So we design organic molecules with specific properties, and there could be redox active properties, photochromic properties, light harvesting properties, for example, that may be useful for photovoltaics or electrochromic materials. And, well, I don't think I need in this audience to define electrochromic materials, but the materials that change color by electrochemical redox reactions. And here's an example just in solution, some of our work where we can have So when we oxidize these molecules in a solvent, it changes color from yellow to greenish blue, and we see a color change, and we like to have this color change being reversibly. And I mean, there are many applications of electrochromic materials. For example, I took this picture from front cover of Nature for smart nanocrystalline materials and glass composites to regular light and heat transmission through windows, so sort of regulating the inflow of light and maybe safe air condition and not having overheating. So, as I said before, we are interested in organic molecules, and we have looked into how to design near-infrared absorbing molecules. And well, this could, for example, be important for telecommunication industry where wavelengths operate in the near region. And for this, we work on pi-conjugated molecules. So conjugated molecules, organic molecules with alternating single or double bonds, single or triple carbon-carbon bonds, and also redox-active molecules. And, well, let me just give here a very famous example in organic chemistry of a redox-active molecule, namely Wurster's blue. And Wurster's blue is this molecule here that is reversibly oxidized first to a radical cation and then to a dication. And this oxidation changes the color from colorless to a strong blue color of the radical cation. And the radical cation here is characterized being fully delocalized. So now I draw the charts in one end, but in principle I can move the charts along the entire molecule. Molecules that have this property are called Wurster redox systems, and what characterizes Wurster redox systems is that they have an aromatic ring, a benzene ring, in the reduced form, and this is the oxidized form. Another famous molecule is tetrafluorofulveline, in short TTF. And this molecule contains two rings connected by a carbon-carbon double bond. And these two rings are sulfur-containing rings, 1,3-diethyol rings. And again, we can have an one-electron oxidation to a TTF radical cation and a second oxidation to form a dication where we have two aromatic rings. So now we have two rings that are sort of similar to benzene. They have 6 pi electrons, so that's a particularly favorable system in chemistry. And again, we characterize this radical cation as a mixed valence system. So this we have here an example of a very strong, fully delocalized mixed valence system. So I've drawn the one resonance form with the radical here, the unpaired electron there, and the positive charge there. But I could move it to the other ring. The two rings are basically identical for this radical cation. This is called a Weitz-type redox system. And this name is due to the fact that now the oxidized form is the aromatic form. So this is as I show one example, we are trying to combine the Wurster and Weitz redox systems to get molecules with many redox states. I'll show you later. So due to these redox properties, TTF has found many applications because you can easily tune the properties. You can tune the properties by adding substituents here at the periphery of the TTF molecule, or you can put spacer units between the two rings and expanding the molecule, making so-called pi-extended TTFs. And due to this, the properties of TTF has been used in many different areas. For example, in supramolecular chemistry for interactions between electron-rich and electron-poor molecules, making molecular sensors, switches, and devices. A redox active unit in molecular electronics. In one of our research areas, we try to make molecular wires where we can control the conductance along the wire by the redox state of a TTF unit. Sort of like a molecular transistor where the redox state of the TTF unit functions as the third leg of the transistor, controlling whether you can have current between two other ends of the molecule. What started the field on TTF chemistry was the discovery in the 70s that the TTF, together with its radical cation, could form a stack like this, and it showed conductance, it showed metallic behavior. It was called one of the first synthetic metals. And as I focus more on today, electrochromic materials is another area, because the different redox states of TTF have different absorption maxima. So we go from TTF itself has an orange-colored compound. When we oxidize it to the radical cation, we change the absorption maximum from 312 nanometers to 580 nanometers. This is accompanied by a color change. We have a greenish-blue compound here, and then we can oxidize further to the dication, which has an absorption around 390 nanometers. These absorption maxima can be changed. Here I show gas phase spectra because there will also be intermolecular interactions. So to see the real molecule without any interactions, we can turn to gas phase spectroscopy. And for the radical cation, we see that when we add these methyl thiosubstituents, we change the absorption maximum here to almost 800 nanometers. We can also make an isomer of TTF, so same number of carbon atoms and sulfur atoms, just shuffled a little bit around. Then you get a very strong absorption here, around 800 nanometers. But before turning to how to move into the near region, let's just have a little bit look into how we can classify redox systems. And there's this Robin and Day classification. So if we have TTF, which is oxidized reversibly in 2 steps, generating a fully delocalized radical cation as the intermediate, it's called the class 3 species. This is characterized by a cyclic voltammogram, where we see a wave corresponding to the first oxidation, a wave corresponding to the second oxidation, and the difference between the redox potential is usually larger than 200 millivolts. Another possibility is that our 2 redox center system only shows 1 wave in the cyclic voltammogram. So now basically the 2 redox centers are behaving as independent units, sort of they don't feel each other. 2 electrons are removed at once, and this is illustrated here by this reaction. We generate directly the dication. Then this is called class 1 in the Robin Day classification, and then there is a second class where we have a smaller difference. So these two waves move closer together, and this is where we get a mixed valence state where there is a weak interaction between the 2 redox centers. So now we can sort of localize the positive charge in one end of the molecule and the other unit here being neutral. And this mixed valence class of class 2 has some distinct optical properties. So often we now see in this weak coupling regime, we see a broad near absorption. For the strongly coupled TTF case, or in general for organometallic species, you can sometimes see narrow near absorption. You don't see that for the TTF system, but you can see for for metallic systems. So now one has to be careful. So what happens within a single molecule level, but the molecules can also interact. And so even though the TTF molecule itself is a class 3 species, it can form a complex which has more class 2 behavior. So this is work by Osoka and Kochi, who looked at the association between neutral TTF and its radical cation, and then they see for this complex a new absorption emerging around 2,000 nanometers. It's a very weak association constant of only 6 reciprocal molar, but it has this significant absorption characteristic of a mixed valence of type 2. Also, 2 radical cations can associate. In this case, we see a new absorption around 750 nanometers for the parent TTF system. So that brings me sort of to the outline of my talk. We're interested to connect 2 redox centers together in cyclic and acyclic arrangements and see how the 2 units talk together and how that influences the redox and optical properties. Also, we're interested in putting a pi conjugated spacer between the 2 rings and then see how that influences, again, the redox properties and optical properties. And here are some of the systems we are working on, these macrocyclic systems. So here we have a system where we call it TTF dehydroaniline. We have linked 3 TTF units together in this cyclic arrangement. And here we have TTF radianiline. And this basically looks like the keynote character. We go back to the Wurster redox system. There we also had double bonds in the oxidized form, where we have double bonds, exocyclic double bonds. And we also call this a cross-conjugated system. And cross-conjugation means that you go from a single bond and you cross this double bond and go to another single bond, in comparison to a linear conjugation where you have double bond, single bond, double bond, single bond, double bond, single bond. But here you actually cross, and this has some consequences for the properties. And, well, synthetically, we built this molecule by making first the monomeric unit, having here silyl protection groups for the alkynes. We can remove those, and then we do an oxidative coupling reaction and get this trimeric structure. So the bond angles seem to fit perfectly, so that's why we basically only get this ring size in the cyclization reaction, and then some polymers in addition. We made this with different substituent groups, and this is a cyclic voltammogram of one of these molecules, and you see that we don't see 2 waves in the cyclic voltammogram. So 2 waves could correspond to 2 times 3 electron oxidations, because we have 3 TTFs. Each of one of the TTFs can be oxidized twice. But we actually see that the first oxidation is split into 2 waves. So first we generate a monocation, then we remove 2 more electrons, generate a trication, and then in the last step we remove 3 electrons at once, generating the hexacation, and it's quite a sharp peak here, probably due to some absorption of this highly charged species on the electrode. And when we look at the optical properties of these molecules, we see that for the monocation we could form in the first oxidation event, we indeed see this broad absorption in the near-infrared region with a maximum around 2,000 nanometers. So sort of suggesting that indeed the TTF units are talking together. You can sort of look at this absorption as a charge transfer absorption, where one of the neutral TTFs donate an electron to the TTF that has been oxidized. So you basically move around with the charge in this way. That's a very simple way of looking at this absorption. Then the other molecule with the radianiline core, we call it, we also make from using palladium catalyzed coupling reactions. So here we have this acetylenic system. We couple with this TTF diiodide, and in this step, getting significant lower yield, we get the macrocycle, well, in this case, in 10%. We could also identify, in this case, we could identify some larger macrocycles just based on the mass spectrum. We could see that we had a byproduct which had a mass which could correspond to this larger expanded molecular structure. So how do the TTFs interact in this system? Well, so here we have the cyclic voltammograms, and it's showing both the oxidations and the reductions. So first of all, let's start here with a simple TTF with the two ephenyl substituent groups. It shows the two waves corresponding to two sequential one-electron oxidations. Then we add two units together in this system, but no cyclic structure. We see again two waves. So it basically means that the two TTFs do not talk much together. They are oxidized both in the same step. We remove two electrons at once, and we remove two electrons at once. But when we cyclize this unit here, we see that the first wave is splitting, and this would correspond to first we are forming the radical cation of the molecule. So basically we first oxidize the one TTF, so now it sees the other one that is oxidized next, generating the dication, and finally we remove two electrons at once, generating the tetracation. So here again we have this possibility of a mixed valence formation. And it's also noteworthy in this case that the reductions look much nicer reversibly than they do for the system here with just the acyclic system. There is a reduction. It's not 100% reversible, and you also see that the reductions in this case occur at much less negative potential. As a return to that, yes. Let me move to this one. So what about the optical properties of the radical cation? Again, we see this broad absorption in the near-infrared region with a maximum around 2,000 nanometers. So by a small change in the structure, by linking the two TTFs by two of these units, we go from a system where we can stepwise do the oxidations and we can generate the near absorption. And we also looked at the spectroelectrochemistry of the other compounds. For the one here with the acyclic is a core. There is basically no absorption in the near when we do the oxidation. When there is a very short linker between the two, then they start interacting again, and we do see some weak mixed valence absorption. But it's much, much stronger when making cyclic cores. There's much more significant absorption in the near. So these were the oxidations, but this molecule also showed reversible reductions. So if you look at the reductions, these, of course, it's one big system, but in a simplified manner, I've localized them here to the cyclic core. And here we can generate the radical anion and the dianion. And as we saw from the cyclic voltammograms before, these reductions occur at much less negative potential than related compounds. So it's quite easy to add electrons to this system. And we explain this by a gain in aromaticity. So again, we use this aromaticity concept to explain it, because when we add two electrons to the cyclic core, we can draw a ring here with 14 pi z electrons, so 14 pi electrons, so satisfying the Hügel rule for aromaticity, the 4n plus 2 rule. And we supported this by some nucleus-independent chemical shift calculations, so-called NICS calculations. So this molecule can take 6 reversible redox states. We can have it in the neutral form, the monocation, the dication, the tetracation, the monoanion, and the dianion. And we also did spectroelectrochemistry of the anion. So the radical anion show here very strong absorption close to 900 nanometers. I did not mention the optical properties of the neutral molecule, but when we look at the neutral molecule, it has here also a broad absorption around 650 nanometers, which we assign to a charge transfer absorption, where basically in the neutral molecule, the two TTF units are the donors, and the cyclic core is the acceptor unit, so a transition where we move an electron from the TTF donor to the cyclic core. And comparing these, so this is sort of a rough estimate of the HOMO-LUMO gap of the molecule, and comparing the different cores, we see that this molecule here has the lowest HOMO-LUMO gap in electron volt, around 1.5 electron volt, depending on whether we use UV-Vis or electrochemistry to determine the HOMO-LUMO gap, whereas this cyclic core here, we have around 1.6 in the HOMO-LUMO gap. Again, we see this charge transfer transition, and for the simple system here, we move to 1.9 electron volt for the charge transfer, mainly by changing the LUMO level of the molecule. So this was molecules with two TTF units spanned by different cores. Now let me turn to extended TTF molecules, where we place something in between the two diphthyrol rings. And well, a simple elongation of the molecule is to incorporate just a benzene ring, and this is one of the derivatives we have made. But then the electrochemistry becomes irreversible. So now we see an irreversible oxidation of the molecule. And this is most likely due to the fact that the radical, so the unpaired electron we are generating at this carbon here, will react with another molecule, so we see dimerization of molecules in solution. If we add a methyl substituent there and there, we see that the electrochemistry becomes much nicer. We do see an almost reversible oxidation, so it's one way of overcoming this. But on the other hand, now that this unit here cannot be in coplanarity with the benzene ring, so we are also reducing the donor properties significantly. Another way of doing this is by incorporating the molecule in this conjugated system. So here we have 3 rings fused together, and upon oxidation, we will not only generate the 1,3-diethioleum rings, but we will also generate this very stable core, namely an anthracene core. And this molecule here is not flat. It has this sort of umbrella-like shape, and when it undergoes the oxidation, you have the planar anthracene and then the 2 planar 1,3-diethioleum rings. So we gain a lot of aromaticity upon this oxidation. And this is work pioneered by Martin and Bryce and others. And in fact, I showed 3 examples in the beginning of how the potentials of the 2 redox processes could change. But here we actually have a situation where the second oxidation is easier than the first oxidation. So this is why we see this as a single 2-electron oxidation, so-called potential inversion. Martin Bryce has overcome this potential inversion by bridging the units by these alkylamine bridges, and then suddenly he can actually see sequential oxidation generating a radical cation that again has a broad near-infrared absorption maximum. So we thought maybe we could move in another way of generating the intermediate radical cation and investigate its optical properties by incorporating another benzene ring between the 2 diphenylfulvene units. Synthetically, we did like this, and this work in collaboration with Professor Michael Haley in Oregon. And we can take this diketone, subject it to a phosphide-mediated coupling with this 1,3-diethiol 2-thione. Then we only react at one of the 2 carbonyls, but if we change the conditions to a so-called Horner-Wadworth-Emmons reaction, we can do reactions on both of the carbonyls, generating this large extended TTF system. And when we look at the electrochemistry, we indeed see that we have now two waves. So we have stepwise oxidations of the two rings. But the first wave, the first oxidation wave here is very broad. And we found that the broadness of this wave was very dependent on concentration. So we saw when we used small concentration, the waves sharpened up. So sorry, this arrow should go the other way. This is the small concentration. At small concentration, we saw the wave sharpened. When we decreased or increased the temperature, we also saw a sharpening. So, put in other words, when we decreased the temperature, we saw a more significant broadening of this first wave. So these experiments sort of indicate that the molecules associate in solution, that we have intermolecular interactions, because otherwise we should not see this concentration-dependent behavior. And together with my colleague, Professor Ole Hammerik, we were able to simulate the cyclic voltammogram, and needed for this simulation to include both associations between two neutral molecules, a neutral molecule and the radical cation, and associations between two cations. And the associations were also supported by spectroelectrochemistry. So when we look at the absorption spectrum here in violet of the radical cation, you see very broad absorption spanning from 2,500 nanometers to around 1,000 nanometer. And this seems to be two absorptions by curve deconvolution. It seems that we actually have three absorptions hidden here. And they showed concentration-dependent behavior. So at low concentration, we had a higher intensity at the long wavelength, whereas at high concentration, the intensity at lower wavelength increased. So we assigned this to associations between a neutral and the radical cation with an association constant around 10 to the fourth, and association between two radical cations, a so-called pi dimer, also a little bit weaker association, but also on the order of 10 to the fourth. So very significant and strong associations, and then when compared to the association constants I showed in the introduction by Osoka and Kochi, who found for the parent TTF we had associations of around 6 and 0.6 reciprocal molar. So by making this expansion of the pi system, we enhance significantly the association between the molecules. So, well, this is again back to the electrochemical experiment. But based on this, we hope that we could grow mixed valence crystals, because we grow mixed valence crystals where we had neutral and cation together, we may have highly conducting materials. So we did electrolysis and grew crystals at an electrode with different counter anions. But all of these salts turned out to be the monocation or monocation plus dication, but none where we had monocation plus neutral in a one-to-one stoichiometry ascertained by X-ray crystallography. And these salts were not that highly conducting. They had showed semiconducting properties. So we are trying to change the structure further and enhance the associations, not only between cation and cation, but between cation and neutral. And we thought that we may accomplish this by adding more sulfur atoms into the molecule. So making these molecules here with a thiophene unit in the bridge, or two thiophenes fused together in different arrangements, we synthesized these three different structures. And here I show you the differential pulse voltammograms. And because here it's actually even more clear how, for the first oxidation wave, it's not just a broad wave, it's actually separating into two waves, in particular for this structure here, we see that we actually have 2 waves for the first oxidation, again also for this structure here, whereas the one with only one thiophene, well, it's also almost separating, but it's a little bit more like one broad wave. So there's quite strong dependence on both the number of the thiophene rings, but also how they are situated relative to each other, whether we have in this arrangement or this arrangement. And it seems we were not able to simulate the cyclic thermograms from this work reliably, but it seems that we will have 1 order of magnitude higher associations, just a ballpark estimate for these molecules. It's also noteworthy that the first oxidation potential of this molecule here is actually moved to more positive values than for its isomeric structure down here. So you see we actually move the first oxidation quite significantly. And this again relates to the conjugation of the molecule, because down here we can separate the 2 redox centers with what we call a linear conjugated pathway. So a pathway we go from double bond, single bond, double, single, double, single, double, single, double. But if we turn to this structure, we have double, single, and then we go to another single. We have to cross this double bond. So we go to single, double, single, and then we have to cross again a double bond to go to a single. So here we have cross-conjugation, and this cross-conjugated pathway reduces the donor properties significantly. It's much more difficult to oxidize this molecule by 300 millivolt than this molecule down here. So that's really important in how the 2 rings are separating the 2 redox centers. These molecules show also interesting optical properties. They all have very broad absorptions for the monocation at long wavelength. And we assume that these absorptions, we need to look further into detail here, but we believe that these absorptions are both originating from intramolecular absorptions of the molecule, but also to absorptions due to the associates that are formed between these cationic species. So to summarize, we can make strong charge transfer chromophores by combining TTFs with such acetylenic scaffolds. We can reach multiple redox states, in particular with this molecule over here, where we combine the TTF-wide system with a Wurster-type system where we gain aromaticity instead by reduction. And the interactions between 2 TTFs or more are enforced by such cyclic structures, and we see mixed valence absorptions, charge transfer absorptions of the radical cations. Then for the indenofluorine extended TTF, so this is the indenofluorine core, we saw very strong associations between cations, which could also be interesting for using these molecules in supramolecular chemistry. So to assemble molecules, we have here strong interactions between the units. They show very broad UV-vis near absorptions. The thiophene units present over here enhance the donor strength significantly when the redox centers are connected in linearly conjugated pathway rather than in a cross-conjugated pathway. So that's another structural element we can play with. And finally, a number of people to acknowledge: Christian Parker, Mikkel Christensen, Carsten Jenum, Markus Antella, Kasper Linke, and Søren Lindbæk Broman in particular contributed to this project. And here I show collaborators: for electrochemistry, Professor Ole Hammerik at the Department of Chemistry in the University of Copenhagen. And for the indenofluorines, we collaborate with Professor Michael Haley at the University of Oregon. And those who pay our bills, Willem Foundation, and also European program ELFOS has supported this work. Thank you for your attention.
So I think it was a nice blend of organic chemistry with lots of oxidation reaction and effect of waves on.
Yes.
So
There we go, sir.
The paper is open for discussion. If any questions?
Your molecules are getting really big. Are you having any problems in terms of solubility with these materials?
Indeed, we have. We have quite significant solubility problems for some of them. So it's usually we never have the unsubstituted periphery. We always incorporate some groups here at the periphery, long alkyl chains, something that favor solubilizing these molecules. Yeah.
Any other question? I have a small questions, Ultimately, where you are trying to use them for taking the effect of the chromosome activity, Where you are going, where are the applications for such kind of materials?
So, that is not, I would say, my strongest area, but I think maybe that, for example, telecommunication, it's quite important that you use near absorptions. It's quite important to have materials that can absorb in the near region. That could be one. Otherwise, in general, I would say for electrochromic materials, when you move to the lower wavelengths, maybe there are more applications in general.
Okay, thank you very much for a very nice presentation. And on behalf of Omics International, we again present this certificate to Mr. Nielsen or Dr. Nielsen. Thank you very much.